Welcome to Aaron Mahnke's Cabinet of Curiosities, a production of iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. When there's snow in the forecast, many kids hope that school will be canceled. Some kids do anything they can to increase the chance of snow. They may bang pots and pans or wear their pajamas inside out. Of course, it's unlikely that these small rituals will have any effect, but they are a fun way to make a wish about the weather. And while today it's common for people to wish for enough snow to cancel school, these kinds of customs go all the way back to ancient times. But back then, such customs were a bit more trying. Every fall in ancient Greece, a strange event took place in the city of Eleusis, just outside Athens. The event lasted 9 days and consisted of a series of rituals to honor Demeter, the goddess of harvest and Earth's fertility. Now, according to the myth, Demeter's daughter Persephone was kidnapped by Hades and brought to the underworld. Demeter embarked on a harrowing search for her daughter, and after 9 days they were reunited in Eleusis. Thousands of people participated in the rituals. Despite this, though, little is known about what actually took place there. But here's what we do know. On the first day, people gathered at the Agora, the marketplace located within the Acropolis in Athens. And once there, a magistrate made a welcome speech. In this speech, the magistrate explained that only certain people could participate. After the Greco-Persian Wars, no one who had ever committed murder was allowed to join. This was the first sign that moral purity was of utmost importance during this event, and the theme continued from there. And those who were allowed to participate made their way down to the Eleusinian. This was a sanctuary dedicated to Demeter and Persephone. The Eleusinian was comprised of 3 terraces. It was built mainly from limestone, and grand columns stood at the front and the back of the building. It was a grand sight. Before the participants could enter the sanctuary, though, they were required to wash their hands. On the second day, the participants walked together to the nearby gulf. They brought a small pig with them and bathed it in the water there. Then they bathed themselves, and afterward they returned to the city and sacrificed the pig. They likely sacrificed other animals as well. The third and fourth days involved more bathing or purification rituals and more sacrifices. And the fifth day is when the participants departed Athens and headed for Eleusis. This was a 14-mile trek known as the Grand Procession. The route they took was called the Sacred Way. Priestesses of Demeter and Persephone led the group while carrying sacred baskets. Most people journeyed on foot, but the wealthy got to ride in carriages. How nice for them, right? One interesting thing is that women and enslaved people were allowed to participate in this event, as long as they adhered to the other rules set out. After the participants crossed a particular bridge, they paused their travels to adorn themselves with ribbons. At sunset, they continued until they reached the river, and there they were met by a group of men whose faces were covered. The men yelled insults at the people, and they mocked them, and the people were expected to humbly endure this. Now, the 6th, 7th, and 8th days mainly involved fasting. Occasionally, the participants drank certain wines or other libations that were significant to Demeter's story. But at some point, they were ushered into a pitch-black temple. This was the Temple of Demeter, known as the Telesterion. The Telesterion was the largest enclosed building in all of ancient Greece. It could fit thousands of people, and without any fires inside, it was pitch black. The participants had to find their way to the front of the temple by simply feeling around in the dark. And this was no easy task either, considering that there was no light and thousands of other bodies bumping into each other. And the goal was simple, to recreate the feelings of disorientation and fear that Demeter experienced while searching for her daughter. And when all the participants finally found their way, they were given light. To their surprise, they stood before a small stage, and there, priests and priestesses performed a pageant about the myth of Demeter and Persephone. It's possible that maybe the viewers also sipped on hallucinogenic cocktails during the performance. On the 9th day, the people returned to Athens. By now, they were fully initiated into a cult of people who had gone through the same rituals they had. Only these people knew the full truth of what took place during those 9 days. The event was perhaps the most secret ritual of its time. Of course, some people did speak about their experience, though, just not in great detail. Many claim that the rituals completely changed them and even removed any fear of death they once had. This is ironic because speaking about what happened during the event was punishable by death. Scholars today refer to this mystifying event as the Eleusinian Mysteries, and although it carried on for at least 1,000 years, we still don't know exactly what drove people's devotion to the ritual, other than their need for a good harvest. So the next time you harbor a secret desire for the weather to cooperate with your hopes and dreams, be thankful that our culture leans on a groundhog's shadow and not a pitch-black temple to deliver a bit of hope. History is full of memorable pranks, but one practical joke in particular stands out for bringing about the collapse of the world's oldest democracy. You see, on the morning of June 7th of 415 BCE, Athenian citizens woke up to a startling discovery. During the night, someone had gone throughout the city defacing statues of the god Hermes. The vandal had smashed their stone faces in and hacked off their formerly prominent genitalia. Panic, of course, spread. The mass castration was a terribly unlucky omen, partly because the statues were supposed to ward off evil, and partly because Hermes was celebrated as the patron of travelers. The Athenian fleet was getting ready to set sail for Sicily, where they planned to attack the city of Syracuse. By mutilating the statues, the perpetrators spooked the superstitious Athenian soldiers, undermining their resolve at a critical moment. But who was behind the attack? Well, initially everyone thought the work was done by spies, trying to sabotage Athens on the eve of its military campaign. But soon enough, suspicion fell on a figure much closer to home. His name was Alcibiades, a young politician and general who was supposed to lead the expedition to Sicily. He was handsome, charming, brilliant, and obscenely wealthy, not to mention a notorious philanderer and a party animal. As a young man, he'd been a favorite student of Socrates, and people still told stories about the philosopher dragging this pupil away from brothels. More recently, though, Alcibiades had developed a reputation for drunkenly interrupting sacred religious rites. But at the end of the day, the big question is, was he actually guilty of vandalizing those statues? And centuries later, it's impossible to say for sure. Maybe he did it out of a misguided hope that the expedition would be postponed, or maybe his political rivals did it, just trying to get rid of him. Whatever the case, he never got the chance to defend himself. His enemies just waited until his fleet departed, and then they tried him without himself being present. They quickly found him guilty and sentenced him to be executed upon his return. Unsurprisingly, the news made Alcibiades a lot less excited about carrying through with his mission. He deserted his post and fled to the enemy city of Sparta, trading military secrets in exchange for sanctuary. He even advised the Spartans to intervene in the attack on Syracuse, thwarting the expedition that he had once been in charge of. It seemed like Alcibiades had come out on top, but his mischievous nature soon got him in a lot of trouble again. He was exposed for having an affair with the Spartan queen, and promptly ran out of the city. By this point, though, he had made enemies with two of the greatest powers in Greece. So he fled to Asia Minor, taking refuge in a Persian outpost. The Persian governor there hated virtually all Greeks, but Alcibiades somehow managed to charm him and even helped broker a tenuous peace deal between Persia and Athens. He probably could have lived there comfortably forever, but the trickster was homesick. He longed to return to Athens and decided that the swiftest way to do so would be to get rid of the government that had once condemned him to death. And so, through some savvy political maneuvering, Alcibiades masterminded a coup against the Athenian government, replacing its democratic assembly with a council of 400 oligarchs. All charges against him were dropped. He returned to Athens, where he was lauded as a hero and given absolute control over the army. His revenge could only have been more complete if he had ruled the city himself, and he almost did. You see, Alcibiades became so popular that the Athenian citizens wanted to see him installed as a dictator. His rivals managed to avoid this by sending him off to battle once again, but he shirked off his duties, leaving the army in the hands of yet another general while he was visiting some brothels. This got him kicked out of Athens for a second time. And just like before, he fled to Persia, where he was finally tracked down and killed by Spartan assassins. Meanwhile, the anti-democratic government that he helped put in place was soon overthrown, allowing democracy to return to the city once again. The trickster's sins had finally caught up with him, and ultimately, little had changed. But for this brief moment, Alcibiades interrupted a system of popular government that had lasted for almost 2 centuries. Most scholars today think that he was the very first man in history to bring down a democracy, and that makes him a worthy study for anyone interested in preserving our own. At the very least, he's a great reminder that sometimes liberty dies in the sound of thunderous laughter. I hope you've enjoyed today's guided tour of the Cabinet of Curiosities. Subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or learn more about the show by visiting curiositiespodcast.com. This show was created by me, Aaron Mahnke, in partnership with How Stuff Works. I make another award-winning show called Lore, which is a podcast, book series, and television show, and you can learn all about it over at theworldoflore.com. And until next time, stay curious.